I write science fiction, as you probably guessed. I've got so one of the things I do are short pieces in a collection, which I've already got one out called Eating Robots. I've got another one coming out soon called Biohacked and Begging, which I'll read some stuff from tonight. And that's being launched at EasterCon, so it'd be lovely to see you all there, and there'll be proper copies and all the rest of it. And if you've come across the Virtual Futures fiction events, so there I curate those. So if you haven't, look them up. They're really good. The February one is selling out. Susie's on April.
Yeah, the April one.
Yeah.
I definitely recommend Virtual Futures. Really a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Okay. Should I read the from the back up here? Okay, so according to this, Dr. Susie Gray, also known as Bard, because I do Instagram stuff on the Bard, is an Anglo-Burmese playwright and poet from London. I have an app that does AR poetry, which is called Poetal Light, which is now available on the App Store. And I wrote Notes from Other Worlds, which is available there. So that was done quite a while ago. And I also have E Tabula Rasa, which is very new. So new, in fact, that it's not for resale, this one. So these are the proof copies I have. And I'm hopefully going to try and do a book launch at EasterCon as well, actually.
Yeah.
So
give me some tips.
So, yeah, I mean, definitely come along to EasterCon and check out both of our books in April. So,
up to you.
Would you like to go first?
I can do, I don't mind. Yeah.
So, I mean, we have questions here as well, in a very fancy bag, that we'll draw out. So these are quite general questions. These were actually generously donated by Donna. So she gave us a list, for readings. So they're quite general questions, but very good ones.
Okay. Are yours short pieces?
Yeah. Well, some of them are short, some of them are longer.
If you wanted to mix and match.
Yeah.
Up to you.
Yeah, I can do it first.
Okay.
I'll just do a short one first.
And then I'll do a short one.
Yeah.
How about that? Okay.
Cool. So, let's see. I think I'll start with one called... so this one is called Glitch, version 2. I'm the glitch, teetering on the edge of a perceived reality, cutting the corpuscles of fingertips, a detective of my own destruction. I feel it in the small rumble of pixels, focal muscles furrowing, to make sense of the mess I became. Destiny only became apparent in hindsight, and maybe there wasn't one for me. I'm the glitch, coding human convention, always, always behind, muscle memory from old textbooks long overdue. I confuse silence with confidence, imposter syndrome of existence that I keep my head down. Smiles are shields that I cannot bear to hold sometimes. We are all walls of cells, I told her, that melt in and out of life, to which she rolled her eyes. I was lukewarm at best then. I conflate the cold with numbness, the fragility of my humanness, as I hold hands to feel myself, drawing a curtain in my cognition where my world ends and begins with an empty stage, all the mirrors frosted over.
Okay, so I'll read a short piece from Hector Begging, if I can find it. So the first one I didn't read is called Happy Forever Day. So, there we go. Uncle Bill is the first to arrive. With the endless energy of a 16-year-old, he bursts into the room. Party, he screams. I wish he wouldn't. It's hard enough to celebrate your 53rd birthday every single year without having the added weight of trying to ignore the enthusiasm of your younger, older uncle. I still haven't worked out what to call my ancestors who chose to stop ageing at a younger age than I did. He's never going to grow up, and any experience he gains won't turn into wisdom because of the strange effects of renewing brain cells. But knowing he's never going to change doesn't make him any easier to be around. Next is Joanna, my 95-year-old granddaughter. Grandpa, she says, giving me a beautifully wrapped present. Happy Forever Day. It's about time you chose yours, I reply. You can't put it off forever. She lowers herself carefully onto the nearest chair. I know. Well, I can put it off for as long as I live. Pass me a gin. I pour her strong gin and tonic just the way she likes it, and wait for the alcohol to work its way into her blood before returning to the perennial topic, her forever day. It's not really fair on the rest of us, is it, my darling? Oh, for goodness sake, stop it. Think of all the knowledge I retain and the wisdom I'm accumulating. Why would I ever choose to lose that? Because you're a health burden? I'm not that decrepit, you know. Quit fussing. Joanna, why won't you choose? I would have stopped when menstruation ended and contraception became a thing of the past. But I like getting older. It makes me feel alive. Every year we have this conversation, since she turned 53 and overtook me. As time goes by, it's become easier and easier to think of her as my grandmother, rather than the granddaughter she really is. And every year she respects me less. Uncle Bill bounds across the room and slaps me on the back. Forever is a long time, he says. It's a really long time, so let's enjoy. He glances down at Joanna and opens his mouth to speak, but stops himself. There's never been a good conversation between them. They are definitely not the sort of opposites that attract. He hovers, balancing on one foot and then the other, his eyes pretending to scan the room. Joanna stands up. It's painful to watch her body coping with old age. It's why most people avoid her. That, and the fact that she plays the cantankerous old woman a little too well. Thankfully, she's fairly straight with me. I'll leave you young uns to it, she says, and raises her glass. Happy Forever Day. Uncle Bill leans in close. It's not right, is it? He whispers. What? I ask. Her. That great-great-niece of mine. She shouldn't keep ageing. We'll have to pay for her medical bills. It's so embarrassing having an ancient. Not to mention the shame of a funeral. She lets it get that far. He's got a point, but it's a clumsy way of expressing it. Immature. I like to think I hold my head up high and support everyone's choice, no matter what they choose. But he's right, I don't. None of us do. He takes a small round container from his jacket pocket. It can't be, can it? He wouldn't, would he? He sees me looking and winks. The clinic, he says. If she won't choose her date, I'll choose it for her. No, but he's gone, weaving between the guests, heading towards Joanna. I can't quite make it out, but I'm sure he slipped something from his container into her gin as he passes by. She lifts her glass from the table, swallows the last mouthful and begins to sway. As she faints, Uncle Bill steps forward, grabs her under the armpits and helps her outside.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, do you want to do it?
Yeah. Let's see. Okay. See, this is a benefit for being self-published. My page numbers actually do line up. Last time they didn't. Okay, so this is called Newtown. So this is another quite short one. I walked in the street, feeling each pore peel, lift and place. A top-down battle strategy, second nature, timed to the sergeant's screams of breath. They said we used to send heartbeats through watches. I imagine his low lunge, eyes dilated, antenna tail pointing north, as he dashes amongst the distant throng of blood. The taste is metallic. Bionic eyes whistling, ocular muscles collapsing like a cannon, an odor sloop dropping the breadcrumbs after a massacre. I walked him in the park, barren landscapes where people used to play. He snaps at the swings, wind severed, flying freely. He lifts a branch-like leg, saluting the USB tree, whilst he charges. Dreams of what could be, wrestling ghosts of rabbits in nuclear snow. I walked him home, waiting for the dots to join, while I recline, scream-like, so I can clip the footage out of his eyes, wrap myself in a scarf of senses to imagine the world outside.
So this next one, have you come across Stellark, the performance artist, who's got the ear growing in his arm? If you've come across it, an ear.
Oh yeah.
So I spent an evening with him, and then I was asked to write a piece about a circus. So this is what came out as a mixture of Stellark and a circus. So it's called Mr. Enhancement. Mr. Enhancement hands his white dress shirt to his assistant and flexes his back muscles. 2 long lines of ears that snake their way down either side of his spine wiggle in time to the tightening and loosening of his body. His spine of ears broadcast the snap, snap, snap of his clicking fingers, and the audience are enchanted. With remarkable dexterity, he runs his hands up and down his arched back, and the crowd gasps at the horrific noise of hand on ear. Up and down he rustles. More and more they wince. He clicks, a final click, and then silence. His silence, their silence. He leans over his shoulder, smacks his lips in a kiss, and they cheer. With one almighty leap, he's halfway up the ladder to the tightrope. A second leap, and he's there, clapping his hands behind his head for all his ears to hear. One careful step at a time, he edges out along the rope, balanced only by his outstretched arms. There's nothing between him and the adoring crowd below. He jumps, twists, and lands facing the way he came. They roar. He dislocates his arm and stretches awkwardly to stroke his spine of earlobes. The soothing sound calms the crowd, and they fall quiet. Stroking, kissing, he has them hypnotised. There's a piercing crack as he tears his arm from its socket and throws it at them. Some laugh, and most scream. He tears off the other arm with his teeth and casts it towards a different part of the crowd. As he steps onto the ladder, he kicks them his left leg and hops to the ground, where he bows until his back is parallel with the floor. Rapturous applause ripples along his exposed ears, and the sheer force of appreciation reverberates around the arena. His assistant clicks Mr. Enhancement's limbs back into place, and Mr. Enhancement gives the crowd one last loud kiss over his shoulder before sauntering away, waving his shirt in the air.
Has Stellark read that?
He's reading it at the moment because he's going to give me a quote for the cover of the book.
Oh wow, I'm really enjoyed that.
Depending whether he likes it or
not.
Yeah, he's been really lovely about it.
Excellent. So I don't know if you want to start the you can just mix up questions and.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah,
I'm
cool.
in your hands.
It's all a bit of a freestyle, but
yeah.
That's good. Okay. You want to pick?
Shall I pick for you?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Or do I pick for me? It doesn't matter. Okay.
I guess we can both answer them.
That's a good idea. Okay, so what advice books for writers are must-haves? Brackets, I rephrased that one. I'm probably not meant to read that bit, am I? So what advice book for writers? The only one I can ever think of is the Stephen King one.
Yeah, on writing. That's what I was going to say.
Which I just really enjoyed. Yeah, I don't know, right? You sort of pick up bits and pieces here and there, don't you? Does anyone else have other, recommend things to us?
Only from my husband's research. The Art of Character. You really like.
The Art of Character.
Yeah, the book. And I think the other one was Into the Woods or something like that. That is how stories are made. So it's like a big analysis of the general characteristics of the structure.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah.
There's an awful lot of them around.
Yeah.
Surely if you go for one written by someone who you admire, whose style you admire, and someone you've heard of.
Yeah.
Because there's probably an awful lot of the ones on how to write a bestseller.
Yeah.
Well,
Indeed.
why is this person writing that book and not
And
a
not a
bestseller?
bestseller. Yeah. How I made my millions.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing I really liked about the Stephen King one, my memory, and I read it when I first started writing, which wasn't a huge amount of years ago, but what I really liked about it was the sort of personal element to it. The fact this was more about him as a writer as much as a sort of how-to thing. I don't know. That's why I liked it.
Do you find that was still relevant? I mean, considering you're more of like a poetry sort of writer as opposed to him, like longer, novels, or even short stories longer than what you've read.
Yeah, I mean, I write novels as well, but I can't even remember much about it, to be honest. I think maybe it was a sort of inspirational type of
because it was
moment
very
or
anecdotal,
something.
wasn't it?
Yeah.
Because I think I read about 10 years ago.
Yeah, it's about similar to me, actually. Yeah.
Because I remember one of the things that really stuck with me is that his thoughts on rejection. And it's something that, something that all writers go through and don't necessarily talk about as much. Because he said that he used to keep all his rejections like in paper form, and he used to stick it to the wall with a nail. And his idea was trying to make the nail fall off by getting so many rejections. So you aim to get so many rejections because it means that you're putting your work out. And I thought that was an excellent idea.
Yeah, I think the one bit that sticks out to me, if I remember it right, was thinking it's just like finding any old little cubby hole or whatever to write in. It was a sort of just get on with it type of thing. And it's a Neil Gaiman quote which is really famous, so everyone will know it. But don't worry, nobody ever reads the first draft. It's just like get on with it.
Well, actually, follow on for that. Would you ever write an advice book? Because I was thinking that. Yeah, I don't think I would either. No. Because I mean, I think a lot of the advice has already been said, but I wouldn't know how to expand upon that.
I think it's so personal as well.
Yeah.
I have nothing against people doing it,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
it's not. I'd rather spend my time writing some more fiction than that. Yeah. Same for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we do another one?
Yeah, why not?
Why not? Ooh, is the internet a boon or a bane for you as a writer?
Absolute boon. I mean, it's just. I don't know how people research things before, to be honest. I mean, or just checking whether you've remembered what something really means, and if I'm describing things. So one of the things I found really helpful. I know you could do this in other ways, but if it's a novel particularly where you're really scene setting and there's a house in it, I just go to estate agents and find the house I like the look of, and then you've got floor plans, you've got everything.
Yeah.
And I know without the internet you could go to the estate agent and all the rest of it, but just things like that are just
quick,
there.
isn't it?
Yeah, it is a bit distracting sometimes, but then
but
something else will be distracting, I presume.
That's true. I mean, especially since this book I'm doing self-published for the first time, and it's something that I wouldn't be able to do if it weren't for the internet.
Yeah.
To be able to market your work without having to rely on a publisher who has to dedicate their time on so many other people as well. The fact that you can have it all to yourself, which is, I guess you have to do a lot of sacrifices of time and everything, but I think it's worth it. You know what I mean? Because you know what you're putting out there.
Yeah, it's a bit like being a punk in the mid-70s or something.
Oh, yeah. That's very cool. So, are you self-publishing as well?
Yes, yes, but through... yes.
Oh.
I think the short answer is yes, but somebody else does all the work. Apart from the writer. So I've got an editor and a cover designer and somebody else typesets it and they put it up and all that sort of thing. So I retain the rights and I retain the control. which is what I wanted to do, but I don't have time to learn all that other stuff.
Oh yeah.
So that's why I hesitate. Because it's sort of, if you're a pure self-published person, you look at me and go, you don't do anything.
And like, what do you think about social media as well, like promoting books? So I think that's almost a thing. Like, you can't really like write now without being on social media.
Yeah.
Well, I guess like some people can, but they're already big enough before, so that they don't need to have it.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to imagine a world without it, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is important. I'm a little bit sceptical of some of the, again, how-to guides, going back to that. There's some very sort of, here are the methods, this will make you a bestseller type of thing, particularly around social media and building up mailing lists and all that sort of thing. And I suspect they work for a particular type of thing. So, I don't know, let's say crime books where you've got a big series around the one character and you can give away one for free, and you know, they're very formulaic, and if you're not following those formulas with what you're doing, they're not going to work.
Oh, I see. So like you give away the first for free, and then they sign up, and then
they buy the second. And all that. I mean, anyway. So, what am I trying to say? I think there's certain ways that people say you should use social media that I don't think are as universal as they might want you to believe. Is what I'm trying to say.
Do you want that?
Yeah. I haven't. We should get them to vote for
Oh yeah, actually,
fiction or a question.
Oh.
And then we get really worried when they always pick questions. Do you write to music, and if so, what do you listen to?
Ooh.
So, not really. Not when I'm actually writing. But I think I take a lot of inspiration from music, particularly on the short stuff, because, like, so this is going to sound odd, possibly, but Lily Allen, I don't know if you're familiar with Lily Allen, is absolutely brilliant, where you get these seemingly beautifully tinkly, innocuous tunes with some really cutting lyrics underneath it, and I find that really inspiring to sort of be able to do stuff where you've got two things going on, it's sort of light, but actually it's not. So, but what else do I listen to? So I'm showing my age now. There's a record label called On New Sound, which had a sort of fairly big reggae contingent, but also I don't know what you'd call them, but people that spoke over music, but it wasn't rap.
Oh, like spoken words.
Sort of quite angry stuff, really, and a lot of that stuff I think is brilliant. So I use it more for inspiration, I suppose, than listening to when I'm doing that. How about you?
Well, I think what you said wasn't odd at all, and I think mine could be a lot more odd.
Okay.
Because when you said odd, I was like, oh, okay, so mine's not so odd, but yours is not odd at all. So what I like to do is listen to podcasts while I write. And some people find that really confusing because you're hearing people talking while you're typing. But I don't know, I like to actually hear people talking in the background, which is like quite odd.
I know somebody likes to have Radio 4 on all the time and they're not listening.
And
really, while you're writing them?
Yeah. I think it kind of drowns out my inner critic in a sense, so you can hear everyone talking. And if I'm not listening to podcasts, I like listening to video game soundtracks. I am a huge fan of video game music.
I take it back, yeah. Lily Allen is not an old choice.
Oh, yes, please. Could I have a glass of rosé? A rosé?
Rosé, sure.
Oh, thanks. I mean, I don't know if anyone knows Persona, the series Persona.
No way, but I haven't played actually.
Oh, which one do you know of? Like, which number?
Persona 4, but...
I listen to a lot of Persona 4. So it's like a JRPG. So it's like a Japanese role-playing game.
Oh, okay.
It's got very good music. Very good music.
Is it just loop?
It's got like there's a whole like it's about 2 hours for like the whole soundtrack. Really cool stuff.
Okay. I feel I'm missing out now.
Yeah.
Can you get it separately as a soundtrack?
Well, yeah, you can either buy it or you can listen to it online.
I had visions of you sort of playing the game with one.
Yeah, I was wondering.
Keep the music going.
Yeah, I mean, video game music is something that I listen to all the time. In fact, I was listening to video game music on the way here. And I do actually, do you know the Sonic games?
I don't play video games.
Oh, see, Sonic Adventure 2, I actually have a signed copy of one of the OSTs. So, yeah, when you said odd.
Yeah, I'll give that one to you.
Ooh, so, you were the one who drew last.
I was.
Does anyone want to hear more questions? Fiction?
Couple more questions.
Yeah. Okay. What tends to spark ideas more for you? What you see here in daily life or what you read? I don't know. I mean, I used to get a lot of ideas from reading New Scientist, which I love reading. Because, I mean, every page gives you a new idea of things to write. And because I used to write plays as well, so a lot of what I heard as well, kind of building characters and observing things. So I guess a mixture of both. Although what I read for inspiration is usually more non-fiction than fiction, I think.
Yeah, I think probably the same. So what I tend to do is read something that, as you say, gives you the idea of what the tech or the science might be and all that sort of thing, and then I'm really interested in walking around with that in my head and thinking, how would that situation be, that real life thing that's happening, if that thing I've just read about existed?
Yeah, exactly.
And,
I have
and,
the same.
and just bumping those two up together. I think, reading fiction's a pleasure, isn't it? So it's quite nice in some ways to switch that part of your brain off when you're doing that. But I must say, that sometimes you read something and you just think, oh, that was nicely done.
Yeah, it
so
kind of sticks with you.
Yeah, so I think there's that.
Because I kind of noticed, in the stories I've read of yours, you start off with a, not say ordinary, but a relatable scenario, and then you put in the twist. Which I really love that. I really love that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I like Lily Allen.
Yeah.
It's like I'm cycling through London, and it's horrible. Yeah. And I think also, and I think with really, really short stuff, you've got to do a lot of scene setting and world building really fast. So you almost have to do it in a way that's really quickly relatable. Otherwise, people are and I do a lot of live readings as well. So it's not even somebody can sort of sit there and carefully, it's once and it's gone. So I think that in the short time, I think that's what led to a lot of that. Make it really relatable quickly. Yeah.
So, do you want to do another? Yeah.
Oh, I've shut the bag rather than open it. Okay, so what do we have here? Are rewards important to you? Do you ever enter competitions? I think that's really hard to answer. If somebody gave me an award, it would mean the world to me.
Yeah, definitely.
But I'm not. It doesn't undermine me or what I'm doing by not having an award. So, are they important? Yes, if I got one.
Yeah. So I guess it's a recognition aspect, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be interesting to find somebody who said
Yeah.
they didn't want an award. I think because it's recognition in it and all the rest of it.
Have you ever made like an eligibility post for like the things for like awards?
How do you mean?
I guess a lot of people do that on social media, so they say which things they have eligible for awards.
Oh no. So that proves I'm not as interested. Really? So you could nominate me for this type of thing?
Yeah, people do that.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah, it has kind of a mixed reception, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I've never come across that at all. And what was the other one? Do you enter competitions? No. But I spend a lot of time submitting stuff for anthologies, which is sort of like a competition.
Yeah. Sort of, yeah, because you're trying to get
You're
onto
trying to be one of 12 or whatever in a particular thing. I feel like I'm missing out on doing something that I should be doing. Do you?
What, as in make... I
Anything,
have actually
awards,
done an eligibility post
Have you?
this year. Because I thought, if people people want to share I have workout, I mean, that kind of alerts people to the work you're doing anyway. And if it's eligible for an award, then it's another reason to put that up. I mean, I definitely don't have anything against people who do. I mean, I think it's great because then I get to read a lot of more things. Because I mean, I think nowadays, because people don't really go to bookstores as much as they used to. It's like finding recommendations and things like that.
How do you discover stuff?
Yeah,
fair enough.
And if you could win an award, I'm just thinking, if you could win an award, which one would you want to win?
Well, I don't pay enough attention to awards. The BSFA award, obviously.
Oh yeah.
And you?
Well, because I write poetry and plays, there's not many awards I can win. Although they have science fiction poetry awards.
Do they?
The Riesling.
The Riesling. I have been nominated for a Riesling a few years ago, so one day. Yeah. So.
I suspect if you do get an award, you then set your sights higher, don't you?
I guess so. I've always liked the idea of the Clark Awards.
Yeah.
That would be good. One day.
Orwell's one of my favourite authors, so Orwell.
Nice. Okay.
What do we do?
Shall we do another reading?
Yeah. Another reading?
Do you want to?
I can go.
Yeah.
So I do have one that I want to read. It's about 5 minutes long. So should I do that one now, just to get it in the bag? So this is the title story of the collection that's coming out. So this is called Biohacked and Begging. Here we go. I'm trapped inside my head, surrounded, alone. They said it would be like heaven, this unified sentience. No more speaking, just thinking. They said that sharing each other's thoughts would be the final step for humanity, the moment when true empathy was born. So why am I sitting here on the street, staring at the legs of passers-by, begging for attention? Look at my skin, dry, grey and cracked. Can you believe they genetically modified us to deteriorate when we lack flesh on flesh with other humans? It's for our own good, so they say. It stops us hiding our loneliness. I mean, what would happen with no physical contact? Mental meltdown? Well, that's the threat. I immersed myself in this unified sentience once, and the cacophony of crap that invaded my mind was crippling. I couldn't cope. In fact, I didn't want to cope. The tedious barrage of other people's thoughts was hell, not heaven. I'm not religious, by the way, but these are the terms that come to mind. They promised us a land of harmony and gave us a life of achingly boring noise. Come on, join in. Don't you dare withdraw. We'll redesign your body to make sure. It was bad enough when we had the tech rammed into our brains. You will listen to each other. You will empathise. We soon hacked that, turned it off, or at least turned it down, but no longer. This ability to know each other's feelings and thoughts is now a part of my humanity, no longer tech. Great. We evolved. It's become an innate biological ability, and it's a nightmare. There's no switching it off. You can only resist, and I do. Day after day after day, I come and sit on this same street corner. I hold out my hands, begging to be touched. I don't need them to look. I don't want them to connect, and I push them away with a torrent of nasty thoughts when they try. They back off soon enough. They see my skin. They know I need flesh on flesh. A few brief moments and I'll last another day or so. Doesn't take much. The trouble is they can smell the desperation. I can feel it in my head as they come near. Superficial hypocrites, emanating good thoughts about how nice the street is, the bountiful shops, and their wonderful lives, while hiding an undercurrent of sadness and loneliness buried beneath the trivial happiness they layer on in thick dollops. None of that alters the fact that I'm sitting here with my hands open and my sleeves rolled up. Nothing. I've been here for hours and nothing. A couple of children have veered towards me with warm thoughts of kindness and sympathy. Their parents grabbed them and walked a little faster to get away. They know what I need. A simple touch would help. They're scared of being infected by whatever it is that's dragged me down, petrified to let me into their heads. Not that I want to be in their heads or have them in mine. Absolutely not. I shift position and the skin on my legs scrapes on the rough pavement. Pain is excruciating. A woman kneels in front of me and grabs both of my hands. She feels my pain. She knows about Tim. I feel it in her too. The loss of a child, the ripping of life from where it belongs. We connect. She glances over her shoulder at her companion. A wave of their mutual love rolls over me and I feel my skin get a little softer. Without thinking, I send a pulse of gratitude back her way and she cups my face with both hands. Her companion wants to hug her to express admiration, but the woman won't allow it. Instead, she channels the admiration from her companion to me. I feel lighter. I feel wanted. I want to feel. My hostility trickles away. I don't want anyone crawling around inside my head. That's not what I'm after. I don't know what I want. They link arms and continue their journey, touching others as they go, brushing their flesh against the flesh of their fellow humans. Fleetingly, a man places his hand on my palm and my skin heals a little more. A child touches my arm with the tip of her finger and her mother doesn't stop her. I feel warm and fuzzy. I don't want them inside my head. Not yet. Not for a long while yet. Another touch. And another. And another. It's as if someone has turned on the tap and I'm sitting under a waterfall of goodness. The boy strokes my arm repeatedly while his father watches from a distance, sending waves of encouragement to me and his son. My skin is changing colour, becoming silver. I close my eyes and let him stroke. He's not my son, but I can dream, can't I? You'll allow me a small moment of relief, won't you? I feel his father step closer. I know his thoughts. Yes, yes you can, if that's what you need.
I'll do a few short ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a lot of really short ones though. So because you did something about a hive mind, I have a little poem about a hive mind actually.
Oh, do you? Oh,
Yeah,
excellent.
so very short. But then we have So this is called hive mind. Lulled to loneliness with the lullabies of 1,000 cries. They weave into one and then scatter onto screens. a mainframe of minds, a montage of movement, bearing baskets of bias, born into new hosts, hatred, happiness, holistically hard-baked, creating future courts of our past crimes. So it kind of matches, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll do another short one. This one is a little more positive. I was just thinking. Okay, so this one is called Swimming. The dance floor will do for now. Sound magnifies underwater. The skull is the roll of the soundboard as I teeter over, watching the world whirl. A merry-go-round of momentum as I reach out my hand, whisked off balance. Particles stirred in this cake mix of code. I dance until I lose myself. We all do. Feeling like Minkowski as we take the stage. Letting the applause filter in and out like breath. The star and the sky occupy the same space as do I. And you, and you, and you. We all smile as we fall into each other. A kiss of the cosmos, a lingering memento of now.
I don't know.
Shall we do more questions?
More questions? More reading? More questions? Yeah.
Question?
Yeah.
Questions?
Yeah. Okay, go on.
What's your desk like, and do you have a favourite spot for writing?
So I live in a very, very small flat. So my desk also is a spare room. Is also it depends, I guess. What I have noticed is I quite like it to be tidy, but it very rarely is. And there comes a point where it's just like I now can't think. So it depends. Sometimes it depends what I'm doing as well. If it's like I need to be creative from zero, I need tidiness.
Oh yeah.
But if it's like just, I don't know, editing something or you know that sort of thing, then it's I can't remember. What's the second part?
Do you have a
Favourite spot to write? No, but I really, really enjoy walking around Regent's Park very, very early in the morning.
Oh, nice.
Thinking.
Oh, lovely.
If you go early enough, there's nobody there, and then you get the joggers, and then you get the dog walkers, and then it gradually
that's very
sort
early,
of fills up with different groups of people.
Actually, you know what I like to do in Regent's Park? I like actually taking a pedalo by myself,
Oh, really?
going into the middle of the water, and then I just I actually white a bit sometimes. I used to do that in the summer because it's so nice.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I used to do that early in the morning. They have like, I think it's like half off, and you do it at a certain time in the morning. Yeah.
I might try that.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. But my desk, it's sort of like a desk. I have like a table in the kitchen where I do all my work. So I guess that you can call that a desk.
Yeah.
Yeah. It can get cluttered a lot, but like you said, like when you're starting something, I do need to have it like tidy because it kind of refreshes your mind, but.
And gets rid of distractions and stops you thinking, oh, I should be doing that or that. Yeah. So do you have to? It's in your kitchen. Do you have to like empty it every time you need to eat?
Sometimes. And favourite spot? I mean, I used to like writing in coffee shops. I still
really?
Yeah. Because I guess it's that kind of, needing to have people speaking in the background. I mean, they already provide the speaking, so...
Nothing good came out of coffee shop writing.
Actually, I used to write a lot of plays in the coffee shop, so I guess it kind of works with dialogue.
Yeah, I can't do it. I get distracted. I get distracted by other conversations, so I find it really hard to write when there's other people talking.
So you still listen to podcasts while you're in the coffee shop?
Yeah. No, that'd be a little too much. It's like layered sound.
On a Bluetooth speaker. It's quickly an empty coffee shop. Trains, actually, I do like writing on trains. I do like writing on trains.
You can't do the circle line now because you've got to.
No, that's
Oh,
true.
yeah. Because there have been times like on the train where, because you know when I'm writing a poem, you don't really need that much space to write in, I guess, because I've written poems on my phone, for example.
Yeah.
You know, when you're on the
Yeah.
train, it's like,
You can do
it's
that.
handy.
I was thinking of those sort of long 4 or 5 hour journey type trains.
Oh, yeah, that too.
Another one? Shall I
Yeah.
pick out another one? Yeah. Here's another. Have you ever been emotionally affected by something you have done to one of your characters?
Wow.
Yes.
Mm.
In the first novel I wrote, one of the characters commits suicide, and I hadn't planned for that to happen. But as I was thinking, where does this go next? It became it was the only that's what had to happen. And it really upset me. It was really upset. It was, and then, because I was quite new to writing as well, I wasn't used to that sort of.
Oh, yeah.
It was the first experience I think I had of the character being real. So yeah, it was very upsetting. I had to keep reminding myself that I'd actually, I was the one that did it. So to speak.
But you created it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I was still. Yeah, I was emotionally hurt by it. Bizarre.
I mean, I've kind of had that in plays. Not so much when I write it, but when I have the characters acting it out, because it feels a lot more real. Because I remember one of the plays I wrote, which is called Some, is actually on the Hive Mind.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, it's a bit spoiler, but at the end, the host, she gets killed, and afterwards she gets reborn into the minds of the other people. But the person who killed the hive mind isn't aware that it's still going on, and she has this soliloquy at the end, which I always like, you know what I mean? Like, you still live on despite that. Yeah. It's just all things like that, especially when I saw it being acted out, because I think there's a bit of a disconnect when I wrote it, but then when you see it, it kind of
makes a huge
visceral.
difference. So in Eating Robots collection before, there's a much longer. So the story I just read out in Eating Robots, there's this sort of 30-minute version. It's set in the same world, and actually this is a side character in that story. So the two stories are from different perspectives. Anyhow, somebody read that story out, and I was crying. It's again, it's ridiculous. I wrote the thing, but it's just like, and then you're right. You're sort of not. You're not as detached.
Yeah, when
you
you
can
hear
get
it
into the actual what you've written. Maybe I'm just a crybaby.
Oh no! Because I always wondered, like, how when people write, because I don't really write novels or short stories, like, especially for like a long period of time, like how attached do people get to their characters? Because I guess like people always say like, the characters speak to them. So when they're building the character, it's just like filling out a form. But like once they get into writing a novel, like the character speaks to them, and
Well, they have to become real people in your head, don't they, to do it. So it's, I don't know. For me, it's a bit like imagining what a friend would do in a situation. I guess. I did have a dream once where two of my characters were arguing and they couldn't resolve their difference and all the rest of it. And then in the dream, I figured out that actually I was in control of both of them and I could just stop them arguing, which again was a very odd sort of whatever to get into. But, yeah, they become so real that I was dreaming that they'd fallen out.
Oh. Did you include that in your story?
Well, they sort of didn't get on for most of the novel, so
I see. So it made sense.
It's not unrealistic. That
Yeah.
They were,
Yeah, I'd really like to know more about that, like in general, for writers of like novels, like how they're emotionally invested they get. That's a nice idea. Shall I?
Yeah.
I've got a question from someone online.
Ooh,
Oh,
wow.
yes!
Hello, person.
Okay. She's watching from Massachusetts.
Oh, cool.
Okay. So the question is, let's have a look. Do you plan out your writing, or do you let your writing lead you?
Ooh.
I would say both. So, I know it's a classic answer, isn't it? But I think, so even with the short stuff, definitely with the novels, I have a very strong idea of the world it's in. I have a very strong idea of the sort of arc of the story, even if it's only 500 words, like where's it going from and to, and then write that as the sort of first draft, which of course nobody gets to read, and then the characters start to become, and the story starts to take its own momentum on and become, and then I'm very happy for the final story to be nothing like the one I started out with, but I find I need something to sort of to have it to be changed, if you see what I mean. I need something there, so that's why I say a bit of both.
Yeah, I guess the main thing is that I have an idea, and usually it's like a sentence or a phrase or like a summary, and then I'll write it based on that. Yeah, it's usually based on an idea, then I kind of work upwards. So I kind of actually create the world from the idea. So I don't actually have an idea of the world beforehand, which I think is quite common, I think, because, you know, that people do world building, don't they?
Yeah.
And then the ideas come from the world. But I kind of start from the idea first and then the world. But that could be because I do poetry. I don't know if it's slightly different.
I don't know. So I was just sort of thinking, if you take Happy Forever Day that I wrote, you know, this was after meeting Aubrey de Grey, who's the I'll Live Forever guy. So I was thinking, okay, so one of the things that the I'll Live Forever people don't seem to talk about is at what age do you stop aging? Because you don't stop aging the minute you're born, because that would be ridiculous. So what point, and he would probably say, you keep aging, you just never die, because science, you know, everything stops you dying. But there is an idea of arresting, stopping your cells aging. So there must be a point, anyhow, I figured, there must be a point that you stop aging. So what age would you choose?
Yeah.
And that was my first thing.
Yeah.
Then I did a bit of asking around people just to see what they thought,
Ooh.
which is where the comment about the menopause and contraception comes in. So
Yeah.
there was 2 or 3 women I asked who were like, well, I definitely stopped before the menopause started, but I don't want, there was and all that. So that's how I built that one up, and then setting it at a birthday party becomes relatively obvious,
it makes,
it
makes sense,
how
right?
do you do it otherwise?
Yeah, so very much like that process, isn't it? So it's the idea, and then you kind of like, oh, where can I make this idea seem relatable?
Yeah.
So that's how I usually do it. Actually, what's interesting is in Notes from Other Worlds, I have a very similar idea as well. So yeah, it's like people putting forward the idea of what their utopia is, and there's someone called the happiness architect. So they actually say what age they want to stay at.
And then that's
Yeah, because they say 18, and then the happiness architect says, you have the rest of your life. Like if you stop it there, because when you're 18, you feel like, oh, I'm an adult now. Everything is
yeah.
So he was saying, like once you pass that point, I mean, there's so many things you haven't explored yet, and they will want to stay 18 forever.
Yeah, it's very good. Yeah, good ideas.
Surely you can't make an informed choice until you've lived through
it,
and then choose
to
go back to where you can't make an informed choice.
No, which is, I mean,
it has to be a personal choice. It can't be other people saying, "Oh, 40 is a good place."
Yeah.
So, but if you had to, or you become like Joanna,
I have no idea.
Yeah, you become like Joanna, and you just don't. You refuse to choose an age. I mean, it's just it feels to me, the more you dig around in that living forever, there's some really quite major, I don't know what they are, problems is a wrong word, but there's some really difficult things within that.
Overpopulation being one of them.
Overpopulation.
Nobody talks about it.
I've got
Yeah.
another story somewhere where they live forever, and they come to the conclusion that they're really, really bored of hearing the same things over and over again. So they invent a bit of tech which stops them repeating the same thing that they've already said somewhere. And they're 900 years in, and nobody speaks because they've said everything, and they're really bored. But it resets after 1,000 years, so they're just counting for another 100 years until the whole thing resets and they can start talking again. And then again, that's another living for. It actually came from being away on holiday with somebody who was really doing my head in. I thought, imagine if this went on forever. But yeah.
I mean, that's quite interesting because especially nowadays, like there's so many remakes of things. Nothing feels entirely new.
Yeah.
So I can imagine like 900
Yes,
years.
of-
Yeah.
Of remakes.
Yeah, thank you for the
Yeah.
question.
Yeah, the viewer says thanks for the answer.
Yeah.
Good.
So, do you want
What are we
to?
doing? More questions?
Reading.
More reading? A bit of reading?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to go or shall I? It's up to you.
Yeah.
No, you go. I don't
sure.
mind. I need
Yeah.
to find something, don't I?
Okay. Okay, so I'll do two shortish ones. There is one about sort of aging here. So this one is called Shop Windows. I nestled in their dystopia of minds, neatly reclining in crushed cognition. Dolls collapsed inwards, displayed neatly between the slits of blinds that I'm too afraid to shed light on. Window displays piled up with baggage, too early to open. My mind grows younger with each passing day, yet my body knows it's too far away to connect now. To perceive how others do or do not see me, often the latter. That scattered dreams still matter, no matter how distant they seem. My mantra against media trappings, and how far along I am in time to climb these ladders now, to open shop again. Where business is booming, will I be too old to trend? Grey matter speckled dust still catches the lapping of sunlight when I close my eyes. Maybe I should stop pretending that I need to find the time.
Very good.
Yay, thank you. Let me see. I'll do one.
another?
I'll do one short one. Yeah, so this one is very short. This one's called Mythical Mosaic. Glass framed, jagged edge. Image recognition from a textbook, way pastel by. From what database did you come from? Where is your server located? Category unknown, and it is imperative not to anger the scanner. I look down at my label, polishing frantically to make the mark shine. I know gold, I know saffron, I know the colours of blue and red. I followed myths of different flavours on brochures that form mantras. I know that I am glass, ready to be shattered and remade, a placating placeholder to the observer, a hive mind of maker.
Lovely. Okay, so let's read this one. This one's called Recon. It was Sunday, early in the morning, and they were having breakfast. Family time was precious, and this was the only sacrosanct meal of the week where they were all guaranteed to be at home. Him and his wife, their son Junior and his 17-year-old James. A drone disturbed their sanctity, knocking loudly on the door to announce the delivery it had left in the porch. The parcel, a reconditioned ex-military robot configurable to protect his family's health, was from a second-hand bidding site. As far as he could see, the only difference to the more expensive reconditioned ones was that it was from a private seller rather than an established shop, and he had no idea why anyone would pay triple the amount for a new one. He'd been waiting for it to be delivered for some time, and as soon as he could, he took it down to his workshop, unpacked it, and carefully laid it out on the bench. Tucked inside underneath the box were the instructions. He unfolded them, and despite the bad translation, he painstakingly worked through each step. After entering strings of random characters, codes for this and that, and pressing a series of buttons, in the right order of course, he uploaded the family photos so the bot knew who was who. The final instruction told him to enter the factory code from inside of the packaging so it could configure itself to the specifics he'd purchased. A preventative healthcare system that would monitor his family's health for danger signs. James had been pestering him for ages, pointing out that by spotting problems sooner rather than later, it had saved money on health bills in the long run. And, if he was honest with himself, he was relieved to have finally bought one. He entered the code and waited, pondering on the preventative element of his purchase. There were cheaper health bots, but they only cared for the sick or administered medication. This one was more specialised. The green light on the side of the bot lit up. It was configured. He took it outside and let go of it in mid-air. It hovered for a while and then shot up high above the house. It was designed to roam freely, making its own decisions as it went. Junior's friend had arrived and they were splashing around in a plastic pool. What fun they were having. As he stood watching them, a bird in a nearby tree was singing its wonderful song. He laid his hand over his heart. This was the perfect Sunday. Junior screamed. The other child had bitten him. Whoosh! The monitor bot flew over his head and fired. A searing bright light hit Junior's playmate. The child screamed. His lips were like molten wax dripping onto his chin. The next few minutes were a blur. He rushed over to Junior. Somewhere in the background, his wife was screaming. Junior was screaming. The child was screaming. His wife was talking to someone on the phone, and after what seemed like only seconds, loud sirens and blue lights filled the air. He was taken away by the police. The company he bought it from took no responsibility. It was in the small print. And he'd been the one that had entered the final configuration code. So he was the one they charged. Assault by activating an autonomous deadly weapon.
Wow.
Cheer you up for the evening.
Be careful what you wish for.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Don't buy the replays.
Don't buy yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, what time is it? Is that clock correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Ah.
More or less.
So, I guess we can open up the questions from the audience because we're pretty much almost done.
Okay, yeah, well, yeah,
Yeah.
very much open to whatever.
I'll ask,
Yeah.
So it's for Susie. So you identify as like an AR poet.
Oh, yes.
So, but everything, obviously, what you've read here is not AR. It's just like classic poetry,
Yeah.
regular, not, I mean, how do you find like the difference? I mean, do you find how would you do a reading of AR poetry, and how do you find like what's the ideal distribution for it, and how is that different from like you call it a chat book or something?
Yeah.
In terms of like getting to your audience.
I mean, that's like the million-dollar question at the moment because I guess AR poetry isn't really a thing like for the mainstream. So it's thinking like, how am I going to differentiate that from the print poetry I do? And I think a lot of it's to do about how much you put in the augmented space. So you don't want to have the words distract too much, otherwise you would have them in a book. So I guess for the AI, I try to make it a little more soundbitey, more digestible in that sense. Because I mean, for Instagram, which I do most of my stuff on, the Insta poetry. If you know about Insta poetry,
No.
so people do like very short posts, and they're quite, I guess, because people like to share sound bites, so it does quite well. And I kind of put that into the augmented space. But I mean, with the augmented reality, what I'm playing with at the moment is video and sound. So it kind of like sticks with you. So there's something different, I guess.
I've just seen your stuff. I'm not on Instagram, I'm on Twitter, so I've just seen the little videos, like
Oh, yeah.
really short videos on Twitter. I guess so it's like three, you know, you got your video, you got your sound, and then you have the words. So I guess it's like the three triple.
Yeah, it's that little package.
Submission. Yeah.
And you're doing an AR poem at Virtual Futures.
I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you want to see it, it works
Yeah.
live.
Yeah. How do you do it? Or is
Plug,
that a
plug.
surprise? We gotta show up.
Yeah, I mean it's very quick. All you need is an app, and then you also just scan the image, and then everything will pop up. Yeah.
Just as if we can get it working.
Are there any more questions? Do you want to pick up one question to finish us off?
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's hope it doesn't actually finish it.
Yeah, that's true.
That was a long one. Okay. It's long enough for glasses, this one. How much of your family and or closest friends in real life first read your stuff, let alone give you feedback about it? Family and friends reading stuff, giving feedback.
Well, most of my family aren't really into the arts, so that's kind of a hard thing. Yeah, most of my family work in like finance or science, or so they're like, you know, you do poetry. I don't know what that is, but sure.
Carry on.
Yeah, because I mean, like, you know, my family would say, oh, you know, you could be the next J.K. Rowling. So yeah. So, friends, yeah, again, not so much into poetry. So, like, with science fiction and poetry, it's either, like, I have friends who are into science fiction or into poetry, but not both. So, it's kind of a tricky line. But, yeah, I do give some of my friends some of the poetry. And they will give me kind of feedback on it, but, you know, as rather, you know, as someone who's picking up casually. So, I mean, that's really valuable as well, because you know, you'll get all sorts of people looking at your poetry or your writing, and like, you know, if you're a casual reader as well, to have their input is valuable.
Yeah, so a close family. So the person I'm married to does read my stuff. Usually when it's at a particular stage, she's very, very good at picking up inconsistencies and all the rest of it, or things that don't quite make sense. So that's really valuable.
I should send some of my stuff to her then, because yeah, I have troubles with that.
And then I've got four or five friends who, even with the short stuff, they all read it, and almost none of them, I think maybe one of them, likes science fiction at all.
Oh,
So again, so I really wanted to make sure that it could hit a fairly general audience.
Yeah.
So that's really important, and that's over the years. So they've been doing that for 4 or 5 years, and it's really interesting because their confidence has grown in terms of what they feel they can say and stuff, and I understand more about them in terms of what I want to take on and what I don't want to take. So I know how to hear what they're saying without feeling like I've got to change everything. So yeah, that, I mean, and I think that's very different to an editor or that sort of input, which is much more about the writing. It's much sort of like a test audience, isn't it?
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
So what didn't you understand? What did you think was going on? Oh, really? Oh, goodness. You know, it's that sort of thing. So.
Although I have had quite a few family members turn up to my place, which is quite nice.
Excellent. Worst thing, so this isn't aimed at family members or friends, but people who don't like the genre but know you and feel they have to read it because you wrote it and then tell you they don't like it because they don't like that sort of thing. It's just like, please don't read it. You don't need to read it.
Exactly.
You don't like this sort of thing.
Don't
Don't
feel
read
obliged
it.
that you have to, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome. So I mean, you know, so for you, Oram, I mean, how do you find? Because you said you've written novels, and then what do you call those? Like very short stories or poetry? I'm not sure. So,
Flash fiction, probably. I think most of them. Some of them are slightly more.
So, like, how do you? What's the difference between how you do a novel and how you do one of those in terms of drafting and planning?
So I mean, there's something about the amount of time you have to retain something in your head. So it takes me about 3 weeks from beginning to end to do one of those, including going round the cycle of people reading it and all the rest of it. Whereas a novel's obviously a lot longer. And it's easier to lose track in consistency of what's going on and all the rest of it. I still think that, for me, I think the kernel or whatever, the core idea is still sort of comes from the same place. So I wrote a novel called Fluence, which was sparked by some very rude staff in a supermarket, and I was like, imagine if actually the world was run by people who run supermarkets, which led on to imagine corporations were running the world and all that sort of thing. So I think it's just, I think it's just fuller, more complicated, and all the rest of it. But a lot of the ideas are the same. One of the reasons I started writing the short stuff was I found that I was sort of getting these little sparks of ideas and then introducing them into a novel where they didn't really fit, but I liked them, so I wanted them in there. So that's why I started doing some of the really shorter stuff, was almost to keep it out of the bigger stuff. But I think it is, and what I have found actually is, so I'm writing a novella novel at the moment, and I found it quite hard to go back from writing the short stuff to the longer stuff, because you don't get that. I mean, I sometimes describe this stuff as the sort of crack cocaine of writing. It's like it's there, it's done,
fast.
Exactly.
How many drafts, like on the short stuff versus the novels, do you want to?
I think the short stuff probably, depending on it, 5 or 6 drafts, I'd say, probably. Novels, I mean, who knows? Depends what you mean, but I tend to edit as I go along as well, so it's hard to tell, really. At least 4 or 5 full edits before it goes to editor, so maybe a similar number. It just feels like a much bigger deal.
Do you have an editor for the for the flash fiction as well?
Yeah.
Same editor?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess if no one has any more questions, I guess that's it. I think we've overrun actually, have we?
No, you're good. I mean, you're about on time now.
Okay, yeah, so
Perfect. Well done.
yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.